Hej allesammans och välkomna tillbaka. We'll be putting the Swedish on the shelf, however, because the next company is Brain Plus. And with me today to present is none other than Kim Baden-Kristensen. How are you doing today, Kim?
Very good, thank you. Hi.
You'll be doing a presentation, after which I'll return to ask a few questions. So without further ado, I'll let you have the word.
Thank you. We'll start with a very brief video just explaining the problem that we are addressing.
This is how dementia might feel to the patient. Dementia is a particularly heartbreaking condition, as it spreads loss and sorrow over a longer time span. Loved ones fade away mentally before succumbing physically, typically 3 to 9 years after the initial diagnosis. And dementia is on the rise globally, with 50 million people diagnosed. This figure is expected to triple to 152 million people by 2050. Dementia not only puts an enormous emotional burden on the patient and loved ones as cognitive abilities deteriorate, behaviors change, and independence is lost, but dementia is also a massive and increasing financial burden on society and is expected to eclipse the cost of cancer and heart disease. Unfortunately, there are no truly significant treatments of dementia today. If dementia could be treated with digital medicine.
And so this is basically what we're dealing with at Brain Plus. We are addressing dementia and in particular Alzheimer's disease. And unfortunately, as mentioned, this is something that touches pretty much everybody's life today, if it's directly in one's family or with one's friends. And it's becoming a major burden. And while there are some pharmaceutical drugs available on the market, there has been no real major breakthroughs. Well, in the last decade, now we're actually seeing a little bit of light, but it's far from enough to address the dementia burden by itself using only medicines. And this is where digital therapeutics can come in and play a role. And a digital therapeutic is a software that treats or manages or prevents a disease, which means that similar to a drug or a medicine, it needs to go through clinical trials and validation to show improvements in health outcomes. It needs to go through a regulatory approval process as something called software as medical device here in Europe, to be able to match the evidence with the claims made in terms of the therapeutic effect. So at Brain Plus, our mission is to help people with dementia to preserve their independence and improve their quality of life by making digital dementia treatments available to them. And the clinical target is to counteract the cognitive decline. So that is the loss of ability to remember things, to pay attention. In practice, it means being able to take care of yourself in daily life, being able to do shopping, planning, and having conversations. That's what cognition enables us to do. So basically counteracting that. The primary therapy that we are working with is called cognitive stimulation therapy. And this is a so-called psychosocial therapy. Today, it is being delivered as an analog method. It was invented in the United Kingdom at the University College of London. Today, people meet in groups of 3 to 8 people with dementia and have one therapist present. Then they go through 45 minutes of structured activities that are specifically designed to stimulate the brain. And it follows certain principles that are important to follow. Otherwise, the effect will not be there. But this particular therapy, which then lasts 7 weeks with 2 sessions per week, is consistently improving cognition in people with mild to moderate dementia. And the cognitive improvements and benefits correspond to a 6-month delay in the decline of the cognitive functions. So imagine the impact that has on the quality of life of people. Imagine what it means that people can stay in their own homes longer. The moment a person with dementia moves to a care home, the cost of caring for that person increases dramatically. And so there's also a lot of health economics in postponing the delay in cognitive decline. What we are doing at Brain Plus is that we partnered with the leading experts of this therapy, with the inventors of this therapy, the global key opinion leaders, to develop a digitalized version of it. And so the first product that we have recently put on the market in Denmark is a companion tool for therapists delivering this method, which provides all the content and all the structure. This saves them an enormous amount of time in preparation for these therapies. And it also improves the consistency of the delivery, which has been shown consistently in the clinical studies to be very important for the health outcomes. So that is the first product. And we have a couple of more products coming online. But first, let me tell you slightly a bit more about the evidence behind this method, because cognitive stimulation therapy is, in fact, today, the non-pharmacological treatment of dementia with absolutely the best and strongest evidence in the world today. If you're familiar with the clinical literature, then there are 2 Cochrane reviews out on cognitive stimulation therapy. This is the gold standard of meta-reviews. Over 100 randomized controlled clinical trials have been done on cognitive stimulation therapy, and the second Cochrane review came out this January. Also last year, the World Alzheimer's Report came out and recommended global implementation of cognitive stimulation therapy. And the World Health Organization also came out and supported this therapy. So we're in a very strong position here, being the pioneers in the digitalization of this therapy, which will become and is on its way to become the global standard for non-pharmacological treatment of dementia. Just briefly then on the other products in the pipeline. The second product is one that allows people to bring this therapy into their own homes, where it can be done one-to-one, either with a professional caregiver or with a family member. A third product in the pipeline is called cognitive stimulation therapy for MCI, which stands for mild cognitive impairment. Mild cognitive impairment is the pre-phase, if you look down here, is the stage before you reach the dementia diagnosis. At this point, people have a measurable cognitive decline and deficit, but they're still able to take care of themselves. Here we have some therapies that are more challenging. And now I've mentioned the 3 products. Now let me speak very briefly about the 3 technologies that are underlying and are built into these products. First is cognitive stimulation therapy. I've already talked a lot about that. A second therapy we're working with is called computerized cognitive training. This is one that is more specifically targeting the user themselves interacting and solving a task, where the cognitive stimulation therapy is more of an interaction, a social interaction that is being guided. So computerized cognitive training, more like playing a game, actually, but targeting specific dysfunctions in Alzheimer's disease. Finally, we have a cognitive test, a memory test developed by Oxford University that we then partnered with them to co-develop for large-scale online and mobile use. This is a test that is so sensitive that it can detect signs of Alzheimer's disease many years, up to 5-10 years potentially, before the tests that we have today can do it. These 3 technologies are being developed and built into the 3 products that I showed you before. A little bit about our progress to date. We have done and have developed all our technologies in collaboration with leading experts like the different universities here. You can see some of them: Oxford University, Nottingham University, the large patient organizations, Alzheimer's Europe, University of Copenhagen, Research Institutes of Sweden. And we have done a number of both feasibility and proof of concept trials and have early success with these 3 technologies. We went IPO'd on Nasdaq First North in Copenhagen in October 21, and since then we have overperformed in relation to the plan that we set out by then. We have, among other things, launched our first product 2 years ahead of plan and already started closing our first sale. And in fact, this week we are closing the second sale with a Danish municipality. So the sales traction is now happening as well. And I'll come back to the team. We also partnered with Roche in Germany, which is one of the leading players within Alzheimer's disease on the pharma side, and they're helping us bring our first product to the German market. Our plan currently, from a commercial perspective, is to take the first product, expand our sales traction in Denmark, our home market, first of all, then introduce it in Germany, and next year introduce that in the United Kingdom. That's kind of the bottom-up sales traction that we're doing. But generally, we're partnering our way to scale. So we are working now, as I said, with Roche through Rox Health, their digital venture builder, and we're also in dialogues with a number of the other pharma players in Alzheimer's disease, because we want to partner with the existing players to bring this out into the world. Then we have a number of clinical trials also planned, which will be with the aim of getting more clinical data. We're continuously improving the clinical data on the products, and also with the aim of achieving large-scale reimbursement in some of the digital reimbursement channels that now exist in the major European markets, like Germany, for example, the DiGA-DiPA. In terms of competition, there are a lot of companies doing games and activities for elderly people, and even for people with dementia. The main difference between cognitive stimulation therapy and our products is the extremely strong evidence base, the clinical evidence base that is behind it, which none of the other therapies have to that degree today. So cognitive stimulation therapy really stands out. And this is a therapy form that is complementary to medicine. In fact, there are studies showing that cognitive stimulation therapy combined with existing Alzheimer's drugs is enhancing the overall effect on health outcomes. Generally, we're looking into a market where reimbursement for digital therapies like this is really expanding very fast. In Europe, the leading markets in that are Germany, United Kingdom, France and Belgium are following quickly after, and the United States is also doing very well in that regard. Looking at the total addressable market, that is estimated to be $5 billion today for digital dementia treatments, and expected to increase to triple or quadruple to $15 to $20 billion within the next 10 to 15 years. If we compare that to the most developed digital health market today, that is digital diabetes management. That market is already at $11 billion and is expected to grow to $30 billion within this decade. If you look now at the costs of diabetes on a global scale, that is around 800 billion, and dementia is already a bigger cost burden than that, already $1,000 billion. That speaks a little bit to the potential of also using digital dementia treatments. There's a lot of stuff happening in terms of big pharma partnering with digital therapy companies like ourselves. And some of the biggest licensing deals are like the ones you see between biotech companies and pharma companies in the biotech industry. The biggest one to date has been a $500 million deal between Boehringer Ingelheim and Click Therapeutics for the development of a digital therapeutic for treatment of schizophrenia. Just rounding off with a presentation, The team, we have a very strong board. Anders Hafstrand, our chairman, is a former executive VP at Pfizer Commercial and has also himself led a number of biotech companies and sat on the boards and has been chairman of boards of a number of public biotech companies. Lars Ternay, senior partner at Nordic Capital, former head of BCG in Copenhagen, is the vice chairman. Johan Lutman is really worth mentioning. He's the executive VP and head of R&D at Lundbeck Pharma, and he is one of the leading experts of Alzheimer's in the world. He helped design the clinical trials that recently got the FDA approval for Eisai's new drug lecanemab, and also now at Lundbeck that also recently got a breakthrough result for a anti-aggression in dementia drug. Betül is also worth mentioning here. She is has been the chief digital officer at Novartis Pharma and Ferring Pharma, very strong on pharma and DTX. And finally, Hanne Hillman, who has been head of investor relations at Zealand Pharma, Neurosearch, and is currently at Nanovi, but has also joined Brain Plus as an interim CFO position. And this is because our current chief financial officer is on a leave of absence, Bertel Stengaard Jessen, very strong background from JP Morgan Investment Banking and from GN Hearing, one of the largest Danish medtech companies. Then our chief science and innovation officer, Simon Nielsen, a PhD in psychophysics and cognitive neuroscience, has led innovation and clinical teams at Coloplast, one of the largest Danish medtech companies and a world leader. Also, Paula Petsu, our CTO, has single-handedly built Lundbeck's digital health department up from scratch before she joined us. Finally, Brian Istergaard, our business development manager, who is building the sales traction in Denmark. He himself built a leading autism and dementia care software system that became the leading solution in Denmark and exited that to a large corporation. So a really strong team. And then we have our extended team, which are all the universities, all the patient organizations, and other funding bodies. We've received over 10 million euros worth of grant funding to date that we are working with on a daily basis. So just rounding off the investment case here, we are addressing one of the largest unmet clinical needs today, where there has not been any strong digital solutions yet, but we're digitalizing the most evidence-based, or with the strongest evidence-based solution for non-pharmacological dementia treatments today, with the leading KOLs and experts in this field. We already have our first product in the market and are scaling that in Denmark, basically de-risking the case in terms of not having to wait years as a normal biotech situation would look like. We're first mover, and we have a very experienced management team, board, and we are working with the world-leading partners in this field. And we have 3 major products in the pipeline as well, so a number of great value creation opportunities ahead. And then, of course, we have a rights issue that is ongoing right now, which I'm sure we'll cover in brief. But you can go to our website, Brain Plus, and look at the investor page to learn more about that. It's basically a unit rights issue where you can buy 2 shares and get 4 free warrants for the price of 1 kroner. We're raising 15.7 million Danish kroner, and we already have commitments of 85% of that amount. And with this, I will end the sharing and join you back in the studio.
Thank you very much, Kim. I was curious because I heard you mention lecanemab, the breakthrough drug in Alzheimer's, and I'm curious to know the extent of the competition in your field. Do you compete with medicine companies like drug companies like lecanemab, or do you compete more with other medtech companies?
I would definitely say that the competition is more with other medtech companies, because in terms of the pharmaceutical companies, what many of them are really looking for now is complementary products to their pharmaceutical drugs. So that's why there's so big interest in the digital therapeutic field, because not only do the pharma companies realize that digital therapeutics will become an important and fundamental part of the way we do healthcare in the future, but they can also see the value creation potential, both in terms of offering something complementary to their products, but even more importantly in the midterm, the combination treatments, where you combine a drug with an additional behavioral intervention like cognitive stimulation therapy to get improved health outcomes. And that, of course, gives not only a better results for the patient, it makes the treatment more valuable in the end. So there's more complementarity than competition between the drug and the cognitive stimulation therapy. So therefore, we see more the other medtech solutions as the competition.
Looking through your news feed for your company, I saw some changes in management. For instance, Bertil is stepping down as CFO for a year, while board member Hanne Hillman will step down will step into the role as interim CFO. How come you decided to recruit from the board rather than internally or externally?
So there was just Hanne's skill set was just literally perfect for the position. So we decided to recruit her to that position because she has now been on the board for a long time, so she knows the company very well. It was really a plug and play solution. Hanne, as I mentioned before, is also extremely strong on investor relations. And so we also saw this as an opportunity to lift the quality of our investor relations even further. So it was just all in all a perfect solution to basically allow Bertil, for his personal reasons, to have a leave of absence until he's back with us 12 months from now.
And as Hanne steps into the role of CFO, will someone step into the role as chairman then to replace her during this year?
So the chairman remains Anders for now. So nobody is stepping in currently to replace Hanne. The idea is that Hanne would return to her board position once Bertil is back.
Let's talk a little bit about the rights issue that you mentioned towards the end of your presentation. You seek to raise 15.7 million and 85% of which represents 13.4 million Danish crowns, is covered with guarantees and such. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? Where will this money be of the best use?
Yeah, so we're raising this money, as we already said at the IPO and in last year's half-year report, of course, to continue our operations. We are still in the very early phases of commercialization of the first products. And so the primary use of the proceeds will be to start scaling commercially. And that means, like I mentioned, scaling in Denmark, the home market, starting to bring this product into Germany, also bring it into UK next year is the plan. So that's one big part of what the funding will be used for. And the other part will be used for the continuation of our clinical development program and product development program. As I mentioned, we have a couple of more very interesting high impact products in our pipeline and a few clinical trials that are supporting those. So that is also what we are going to use the money for.
Earlier this year, you also mentioned that Japan is an interesting country for CST. What of Japan? Is that an interesting market for you to also head into?
Absolutely. I think currently the sequence of market entry that we have pronounced or have basically locked ourselves onto for now is Denmark, Germany, UK. But then the two additional markets that we're then targeting or having in our perspective is the United States and Japan, which we think are very important markets, not only in terms of size, but also as key reference markets in dementia. Japan is a place where they have the largest elderly population and hence also some of the largest prevalence of dementia care. So it's very high priority for them over there. And while I can't say anything specific at this point, we are having dialogues over there. And if we go to Japan, we'll seek to do so with a partner.
In April, you announced a collaboration with the Malteser Hilfsdentist in Germany. What sort of future do you see with them?
So in Germany, there is a number of different ways that people with dementia are being cared for. And a large part of that is a number of big social and sometimes charitable organizations. And the Malteser Hilfsdienst is one of the largest charitable organizations in Germany. And they have 100 specialized dementia cafes all around Germany. And so this is one way to really reach the German dementia population. It's one of several ways. It's not the only way. But we see it as a very great opportunity to basically do some of the first piloting of our product on German ground with one of the major players down there. And of course, our wish is to basically expand with them within all of their dementia cafes eventually. And so that's just one example of once we get into some of the bigger markets like Germany, there are these players where once you get in, you can actually grow also within them.
On the 15th of May, you're hosting an online investor update. Without perhaps telling us too much, what do shareholders have to look forward to?
So at this update, we will talk more about, not so much as today where we presented the company generally, but hone in more on specifics, like what are some of the more recent things that have happened, what has been developing recently. For example, the second sale, what does it mean? What are the plans for commercialization? What are some of the more detailed plans for the company?
Thank you very much, Kim Baden-Kristensen, for your presentation, and I wish you the best for the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you.